and any electrical devices, and refrain from speaking unless recognized. If you are in attendance and wish to speak during public comment and/or public hearing, speaker cards are located in the lobby area at the rear of the chamber. Please fill out a card and submit it to the recording admin before the close of the public comment and/or public hearing. Again, this is a public meeting for the community of Glendora. We appreciate and respect your participation here this evening. Present, Tim Crimmins is not present. This time. Does anyone wish to reorder or add to the agenda?
Forgot the Pledge of Allegiance.
Oh, dude, missed that part. Yep.
2 days before 4th of July.
I know. I didn't see it on my thing here. So, where did I miss it? All right, at this time, we'll just stand and we're going to do the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sorry about that. I see it there on the meeting minutes now. So now I'll ask if does anyone wish to reorder or add to the agenda? Nope. All right. At this time, I'm going to open public comment and invite members of the public to address the legislative body. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, speaking once on both on and off agenda items. Although there will be a time when you can speak on the agenda items at that point too if you want to wait. If you are in attendance, please fill out a speaker card and submit it to the recording admin before the close of the public comment period. Once recognized, speakers should advance to the podium, state your name and the subject matter you wish to discuss. At this time, I'll invite speakers to come to the podium if there are any for public comment.
And then just for the record, I have received one public comment, but it's for the public hearing item number 2, or excuse me, 3 for the public testimony.
Okay.
Okay for me?
No, yours is for number 3.
Yeah,
You'll be called at that time.
When we get to the items, you have time to speak there too. So, all right, looks like seeing nobody for the general public comment. I'm going to ask if we have any correspondence, which we do not. All right. I'm going to close the public comment period. At this time, we're going to go to member statements and reports. So if there are any commissioner statements that you would like to make before?
I don't know if it's appropriate enough to do it. Might this be an appropriate time to declare that we met with the
At the time the item is called.
start of the item? Okay, then I have nothing.
Okay, great. I'll invite Jeff to give us any comments or statements, and then Judy.
No updates this evening, thanks.
Thank you. Judy?
Nothing for me either. Thank you.
All right, great. All right. At this time, we're going to administer the oath of office and reorganization for the term of 2025 through 2026. I'm going to invite the city clerk specialist, Lorena Cordova, to report.
Thank you. So at this time, I'm going to ask if Chair Faber and Commissioner Jarvin, if you could please meet me at the dais.
Yep.
And repeat after me. I state your name.
I,
I, Wendy Jarvie,
Do solemnly affirm
do
solemnly affirm
that I will support and defend
that I will support and defend
the Constitution of the United States
the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California
and the Constitution of the State of California
against all enemies,
foreign and domestic,
foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith
that I will bear true faith
and allegiance
to the Constitution of the United States
to the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of California,
and the Constitution of the State of California,
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully
and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I'll have you both sign where I have it through. This is your first official term.
All right,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Okay, so at this time, I am going to declare the offices for the chair and vice chair vacant. Nominations are now in order for chair. Are there any nominations?
I'd like to nominate Mark Davis to be chair. Or sorry, Tim Crimmins.
Do we have any seconds?
I'll second.
Okay. So any other nominations? Seeing none, Crimmins will be our new chair. And since he's not here, I will go ahead and do the vice chair. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
I'll nominate Mark Davis, Commissioner Davis.
Do we have any other nominations? Seeing none, congratulations, you're Vice Chair Davis. So I will turn the meeting over to you so that you can run the meeting. And we'll stay in our spots for next meeting. I will switch you guys around.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so cross this off the list there. Good evening, everyone. I'm Commissioner Mark Davis. So at this time, I will read the agenda title into the record and declare that the public hearing will be open. A recommendation to the City Council on a tentative tract map and development plan review for 41 single-family detached residential homes at 263 South San Jose Drive, project file number PLN 24-0045. The applicant is the Olson Company, property owner, City of Glendora. At this time, I've declared the public hearing open, and I'd like to have Senior Planner Yanni Siva. Did I say that right?
Prior to doing that, I would like to make it very clear that I was asked and I have met with the developer to get information on the project. I wanted to make sure that I had as much information as possible prior to this meeting.
Similarly, I met individually with a member from the Olson Company for a short time to develop the aspects of the project itself as well. Okay, take it away, Yanni.
Thank you. To begin, the draft resolution that was included in your agenda packet has a redlined version. I think you should have each of your seats. There are copies by the front door as well, if anyone wants to look at the redlined amended version.
Got it.
The project request from the applicant, the Olson Company, includes a tentative tract map to subdivide 4 parcels to create 41 residential detached single-family units. This also includes a development plan review for the project's development plans, a SB 330 for request for early vesting for overall fees and the streamlining of the process, and also a categorical exemption per CEQA. The project is located north of Route 66, east of Lorraine Avenue, south of Foothill, west of Big Dalton Wash, and just north of a city yard. The project site is a city-owned property which is currently under escrow with the applicant. According to State Surplus Land Act and the State Department of Housing and Community Development, they were allowed the city to list the property for sale to developers who would set aside 15% of the new homes to moderate income households. The City Council has supported the sale of this property accordingly. 7 of the 41 proposed homes would be available for purchase to moderate income qualified buyers. State law allows developers to request concessions, waivers, and incentives, and for this project, these include reduced parking, reduced lot area, lot width, depth, setbacks, additional building height for the units in the second floor area, and reduced number of parking spaces. This is the proposed site plan, which shows an extension of Woodland Lane and also an extension of San Jose Drive, the 41 detached units, and also 3 open space areas. A traffic study was completed by a traffic engineer to analyze the project's circulation and safety, wherein traffic counts were taken in mid-April. The traffic engineer is here to answer technical questions regarding the traffic study itself, and we have a quick synopsis for you. So the traffic study is an analysis of existing vehicle trips occurring in the surrounding area of the project site and focuses on intersections and how they perform during peak periods of the day, AM and PM, when the greatest number of vehicle trips occur. The study also evaluates the performance of intersections in the surrounding area, or the levels of service, LOS, which assigns a grade of A to F. The performance and grades are associated with how long a vehicle waits before being able to pass through the intersection. The numbers noticed on this slide, which might be a little small, are the intersections that were studied. Pursuant to the city's general plan circulation element, an acceptable level of service is D. The study describes LOSD as wait times of 35 to about a minute at a signalized intersection and 25 to 35 seconds at a not signalized intersection. Vehicle counts were taken during AM and PM, and it notes in one of the sections that the peak hour period for the study covers a 2-hour period in both morning and PM. This table from the traffic study itself summarizes the traffic volume entering and exiting the area surrounding the project site. The traffic study determined that based on the traffic counts, the magnitude of traffic in the neighborhood is insignificant. This is Table 7 of the traffic study, which shows that existing conditions from peak period counts, which shows that the intersections currently operate at an acceptable level of service during peak hours. This is Table 4 from the study, which is a summary of trip generation associated with the proposed project. This table and the existing peak hour counts propose that the proposed project would add approximately 29 morning trips and 40 evening trips, therefore insignificant per the study. This is the slide that shows the proposed Woodland Lane extension and the forecasted trips on San Jose Drive, which averages to about 50% of trip distribution throughout the area. This exhibit shows traffic movements at the site intersections, which shows a proposed number of approximately 13 to 17 additional trips throughout the peak morning and evening hours. This table shows that the overall traffic study shows that the addition of the Woodland extension and the proposed project is not expected to result in any substantial changes to operations of any of the studied intersections. The report maintains that a traffic signal is not warranted to serve the small number of vehicles trying to enter and exhibit the neighborhood via San Jose. Overall, the Woodland connection will add a second point of access, which improves circulation and access for emergency and service vehicles. At the same time, the project and new connection does not substantially change the performance of the nearby street intersections. This is the proposed landscape plan, which provides 3 open space areas and also retains a number of the existing trees that are existing throughout the site. This is an elevation that is proposed for the project that shows a contemporary architecture style for the proposed units. There are 2 stories. There are also 1-story options. This is the street view rendering. A public notice was mailed and published in the newspaper on June 19th. And therefore, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission recommend that the City Council approve and request the approval of a tentative tract map development plan review to develop 41 detached residential homes at the site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to invite Brian Geis, is it, up from the Olson Company to present. You have 10 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Again, I'm Brian Geis with the Olson Company. I'm joined tonight by John Reekston, also with the Olson Company, and we have Peter Dorte, our landscape architect, Steve Austin, our civil engineer, and Alex Tabrisi and Art Alvarado. Alex is the project architect, or Alex is the traffic engineer. Art is the project architect. They're here to answer questions if you have specific questions that require technical response. I'd like to thank you for being here, just for taking the task of development in your city seriously. We appreciate the time and effort that you put into reviewing our application. I'd like to thank Yeleni for the clear staff report, and the planning team, Jeff and Mark, and their group over there for guiding us through this process. And okay, there's my presentation. Great, this is working. Just real quick, some quick context. So if this project were to go forward, we would hopefully be to City Council in August, and we would be grading in October. Site work would complete around April of 2026. We would open models in October of next year, and deliveries in February of 2027. And I just wanted to point out the red line that was handed out of the conditions, or the ordinance, did not change any of the specifics in the project, didn't change what we're proposing to develop. The red lines primarily pertain to the conditions of approval. So no change to the development plan in that red line document. Okay, just a bit about the Olson Company. We've been doing this for 36 years, and our focus is entirely on infill development in LA and Orange County. We are a 10-time winner of the Alliant Award, which is similar to J.D. Powers, but for home building. We've won that 10 times. It tracks our experience, customer experience in the sales process, the customer service process, and then the 10-year, just the life of the project. And we've been voted most recently #1 in the nation in this category for customer service. This is competing with hundreds of builders, public builders nationwide. Our company takes customer service very seriously. It is what informs all of the decisions, everything we do. We have something called the Champion Program, where a staff member stays involved in the Homeowners Association for 10 years as a liaison between our company to help resolve problems if they should arise before it becomes legal in nature. A little bit about the community process. So the city, as Yeleni mentioned, approved this parcel for sale back in 2023. And then the city staff and elected officials conducted the first meeting in the spring of 2023 over at Williams Educational Center. Once Olson was selected as the developer, we held 3 meetings, one in August of last year, one in November of last year, and then one in March of this year. The purpose of these meetings was to present our plans as they progress towards our submittal. Also to field questions, meet with neighbors, and receive comments and concerns, which we did. The format was an open house style of 4 hours from 10 to 2 on a Saturday each time. It was at Williams Educational Center, which is about a quarter mile from the site. We sent out invitations to a 500-foot radius, which was over 300 invitations for each of the meetings were mailed out. And we had about 25 to 50 residents at each meeting. Just a brief history and timeline. As Yeleni mentioned, this site was declared surplus back in 22. It required the city to make the land available to a state-qualified housing developer. 25% of the homes at that time were to be income restricted. And with the current general plan and zoning and the state density bonus law, 54 homes could have been built on the site. With additional affordable homes, as the percentage increases, more than 54 homes could conceivably be constructed on the site. We worked with the city to optimize the plan, looking at the surrounding neighborhood, and the plan was eventually reduced to 41 homes, thanks to city staff negotiating with the state. Again, just the laws that affected this, the Surplus Land Act, State Density Bonus Law, Housing Accountability Act, and Housing Crisis Act. I won't go into those. If you have questions, we can talk about them. So what did we hear? Community concerns, make it a park, lower density than they were thinking. Some folks thought it was higher. Lots of undesirable wildlife. Some people thought the wildlife was good. Keep it. Keep the trees, remove the trees. Privacy, scale, concern about how many homes and how big they would be. Walking sidewalks were desired. And people asked, how do I purchase one of the affordable homes? And some folks did not like affordable homes. With regards to vehicular concerns, which seems to be the focus, most of the comments that we received had to do with vehicular concerns. Increased trips was something of concern. Overnight street parking, conflicts with construction vehicles, emergency vehicle access, and the morning trips at the intersection of San Jose and Foothill, particularly on school mornings. There was concern about there could be potentially a future through access at Cossack's Place, shown here. Others expressed concern that we might try to punch through onto Walnut through the south end of the site. And others were concerned about the interconnection of San Jose and Woodland Lane. In the site plan, we did not and could not create access over Big Dalton Wash, so that concern is not valid. And also, it's physically impossible for traffic to exit down and cross through onto Walnut Avenue without removing homes. So that's not a viable concern. And then the last one, the connection at San Jose and Woodland, is part of the plan. Here's the site plan, as Yeleni showed real quickly. 41 homes, fee simple lots, not condos. Single-story and two-story homes, 7 moderate-income homes shown here in these locations. Quickly going around the features, wooded open spaces, on-street parking, traffic calming devices, chokers or bulb outs, which restrict the width of the street to slow traffic. Public streets, not private streets, public streets open to the public. New street trees, 5-foot wide sidewalks, a new cul-de-sac at the end of San Jose, masonry perimeter wall around the outside of the project, wooded open space at the south with a deck, seating, and a dining area. HOA maintenance of all the front yards and streets, parkways, no cost to the city for those improvements. Private rear yards on every house. Enhanced paving at some of the intersections, preserving approximately 12 to 15 oak trees on site. The architecture, here's a perspective rendering at the south end of the project, looking south towards the park at the bottom. We selected a kind of a contemporary prairie style because the kit of parts used the materials that would blend in with what's already in the surrounding neighborhoods. We did not want to introduce incongruent styles, so we've picked this one style that will be featured throughout the neighborhood. Hipped roof design, decorative bay windows, primarily stucco cladding, decorative garage doors, stucco walls facing the public streets, builder-installed front yard landscape, brick cladding on the front, decorative sconce lights, decorative entry door, vinyl windows, and a composition shingle roof material. That concludes, one more slide, just real briefly. Economic benefits of new home construction. I do see I'm out of time. I'll wrap it up. During construction, this project will generate approximately $11 million of business and personal income, 1.3 million in government fees and taxes, and 164 full-time equivalent jobs during the 24-month construction period. Ongoing benefits are recurring each year would be about 1.6 million of business and personal income from the 41 new households living in Glendora, about $415,000 of recurring government fees and taxes, and 27 permanent local jobs. And the permit and developer fee revenue shown here, $270,000 for permit and plan check fees, and developer fees to the city and school district of about $650,000. And that concludes my presentation. I apologize for running a few minutes over.
Okay, Brian, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, at this point in time, I'd like to open the public testimony, invite members of the public to come up and speak on the item. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes, speaking only on this agenda item. If you are in attendance, please fill out a speaker card and submit it to the recording admin before the close of the public testimony period or before you leave the building. Once recognized, speakers should advance to the podium. Actually, it's a lectern. State your name and the subject matter, obviously, what you wish to discuss. At this point, I'd like to invite speakers. I have a speaker card here for Steve Kerman. Come on up, Steve.
Great, thank you. And we've met, Mark.
We have, yeah.
Yeah. Came by the neighborhood the other day. Yeah, I'm Steve Kerman, and I don't have a fancy traffic plan here to put up for you guys, but what I do have is 64 years of experience of that neighborhood. I mean, I've walked the neighborhood, I ride my bikes in the neighborhood, I've driven and commuted in that neighborhood, and I'm telling you that I thought I saw a little F there at San Jose and Foothill. Commute time in the morning, it is miserable. I mean, you just hang out there and see how backed up the traffic is. Our concern, I think, and kind of representing a lot of the folks on Woodland Lane is where I live, is the increased traffic. And I think we know the houses are coming. I mean, it's going to happen. And I guess what we're looking for is try to kind of minimize that traffic a little bit. Brian had mentioned the Cossacks and the little alleyway to maybe add a third access to all this. I think it would solve everybody's traffic concerns, because if you're going to Route 66, you can head off a different direction. Another direction would be the city yard to maybe give a little bit of an easement or a right-of-way down there, which is at the south end of the property. That would be ideal, because there's already a crossing there to St. Vladimir. Anybody in this whole community that would be leaving to go to Route 66, they can go right out south end down there. I think that would solve everybody's concern about all the added traffic. Right now, if it stays as it is, I know, and I think our community knows, that the traffic's going to increase. And for our little street, just 6 homes is 100% increase in traffic for us. We live in a small little cul-de-sac, so our thought and our ask was to put a little gate there to kind of separate the two communities, one on the San Jose side, we'll call it, and the one on the Woodland Lane side. And even the developer said, oh yeah, you know, that's easy, and I think we all know that would be easy to do. Some of those other additions or accesses would be at a cost. But that's what we're looking for. I mean, the increase in traffic would be substantial. There's a lot of kids that play in the neighborhood because it's very quiet, small little streets, and the kids are playing all the time, and very concerned about the traffic for the kids in the community. And we think there's a little gate there. And I don't even live on San Jose, but I'm telling you, I think that traffic, however that was done, you need a traffic signal at San Jose. Then the 20 some odd new homes and all of the 20 some odd homes in San Jose, easy, access to get out onto Foothill Boulevard. And then the rest of the community on our side, they have the Stephan Street traffic signal. So I think that division is really nice. I've mentioned it several times at these meetings that we've been going to. So that's the story I have to tell, and I do appreciate you guys listening to me. And hopefully we can do something. Thank you.
Okay. Steve, thank you very much for your comments. Do we have other comments either online or anybody else wishing to speak?
Okay, if you can please, I think we have two or one, how many? We have two. Which one would you like to call first? I don't have their cards yet.
I don't have any cards.
No, so they're asking to speak.
Oh.
So which one would you like to call?
Lady in the third row.
Just please state your name, and then I'll take the card after you're done.
Hi, my name is Annie Bradley, and I'm a homeowner on Woodland Lane, the cul-de-sac there. But I was raised on Woodland Lane at 1243, so I have lived on the street for 44 years now. And I have two kids, and they play in the neighborhood every day. Actually, a few of us are represented here. I see Orion sitting there. There's about 15 kids that play every single day on the street. I'm even tan. You can see I'm out there constantly with the kids. And our huge concern is what Steve is saying is the traffic. I know that there was a traffic study done, but I would really ask, can another one be done? Because just with observation, living there, I know that our traffic is going to increase. And with the traffic from the high school, during those hours, if there's a place where you can cut through, that's absolutely going to happen. It would be the same as if we were to make a cut through street over on Oak Tree Drive over by the high school and up to Sierra Madre. Like, you'd have traffic going through that private community. And our little community that we have, Carroll, Burnaby, Woodland, all of the side streets there, we all know each other. There's faces all in here. I know every single person that lives in our neighborhood. I've went to their door, I'm raising kids with them. And that access point that you're planning on building from San Jose to Woodland, that connection street, is a huge safety concern. I'm concerned for our kids. They ride their bikes, they play in the streets, they're having water balloon fights, we have bonfires all of the time. We're really a close-knit community, and we're multi-generational too. The older people, the younger people, we're all outside together. I have neighbors that have known me since I was a little kid, and I love them, and I don't want to see them in their retirement years having their houses destroyed with all of this traffic going through. It's really sad to me. And I'm a social worker by trade, and so that just really pulls at my heartstrings to see that we're not caring for the older members in our community as well as the younger ones. So that's all I wanted to say. If you could please take that into consideration. I know I've met the gentleman from the Olson community. I've met with him like one-on-one even in conversation, and I appreciate them. And they have said that it wouldn't be a problem to put a fire gate in the middle there, divide the two communities, like have a San Jose, have 21 houses over there, 20 on Woodland, or however you want to break it up. If we could just not have it be a drive-through, that would be really appreciated by all of our community. And I know I'm speaking for a lot of people because we have a petition too, and a lot of our neighbors have signed it. I'll make sure to hand that in when whoever, I don't know who to send that to, but we do have one.
Okay,
So thank you.
Okay. Lady in the back, thank you. Thank you for speaking, by the way.
Hi, good evening. I'm Erica Munoz. I'm here regarding the affordable housing. I am the owner of Black Rose Barbershop here in Glendora. I'm also a resident. I am also a mother of children who graduated Glendora High and now attend our local community college. I'm here tonight not just as a business owner, but as someone who's fully invested in this community. Sorry, I'm a little nervous.
That's okay, take your time.
But
I'm nervous too
also-
all the time.
I know, sorry. But also as someone who's fully invested in this community, I do love the city. It's where I raised my family. It's where I build my livelihood. I contribute every day to it. I grocery shop here, I eat here, you know. I may not live up in this area to know much about the parking, but what I do know is that what happens to people like me that can no longer afford to stay here because we're getting priced out, because we have shrinking options. Nobody is really asking for handouts. We're asking for a fair chance. You know, barbers, teachers, mechanics, restaurant staff, people who actually build the fabric of this community need a fair chance. I agree. If I live there and I have kids and I have dogs, I wouldn't want to get hit by a car. You know, I agree. Traffic flow should be flow smoothly. I live in townhomes currently, and everything's set up. I'm affected daily by the metro. Could things be different? Yes, but it is what it is. If the slight changes can be changed for parking, that would be great. I'm not exactly sure in that area how it flows. But I don't want to get too much off topic. I just want a suitable and inclusive city. I think we're all here for something. Not everyone here can afford high-end real estate, but we do. A lot of us can afford affordable real estate. I want to give my daughter something when I'm dead. I want to retire here. I want to live here. This is where I plan on doing everything. So tonight, I just ask on behalf of small business owners, working parents, and longtime residents to please keep working on expanding affordable housing. Because families like mine aren't just trying to live, we're trying to stay rooted in the place that we grow and we continue to contribute to. That's about it.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, with that, any other cards? Anybody else wish to speak? Okay, seeing nobody. At this point, I will close the public testimony portion and invite Brian Geis, the Vice President of Olson Company, to provide a summarization and closing remarks if desired. You've got up to 5 minutes, sir, if you choose to.
Yeah, thank you. Well, we appreciate everyone that came out. We've gotten to know the neighbors. Steve, appreciate the hard work and thoughtful alternative plan that you put forward. I feel like, although we had disagreements, it was for the most part civil during the process, and that is commendable. Just a couple of things I wanted to note. Although the gate was brought up during some of these discussions, when we made the decision to go with a public street, the public street and the connection were primarily introduced for safety and for utility purposes. The connection of San Jose to Woodland Drive facilitates an alternative route in the event of either a closure on San Jose, which is a narrow substandard width street, especially when there's parking on both sides. It now provides another route out for those 39 homeowners on San Jose. It also provides a safe route to exit during rush hour traffic from San Jose without having to exit onto Foothill Boulevard at a level of service E or F at that intersection, depending on morning or evening. Yes, it would reroute traffic through Woodland in front of Mr. Karaman's house and others in that neighborhood. And just for context, between San Jose, Woodland, and the streets that exit onto Lorraine and Foothill, there's about 170 homes there right now. We're proposing to build 41 homes. That's about a 25% increase in just the physical number of homes. The traffic capacity on those roads is not the issue. The intersection levels of service is a non-issue. The issue is there are certain folks that live at the fringe of our site that will see an increase in trips. That increase in trips is not sufficient, or it's not a public safety issue. It is a change. It's a big change. If I lived there for 44 years, if I let my kids play in that street and I was going to lose that, losing the ability to play in a public street, I would feel a sense of loss. I do understand that. However, we understand also Woodland terminated It does not have a cul-de-sac at the end. A fire truck can't turn around at the end of Woodland Street. A fire truck can't turn around at the end of San Jose Drive right now. We're providing a through connection and a full cul-de-sac at the end of San Jose Drive that will allow a fire truck to make a safe and complete U-turn without having to back out on San Jose Drive. So I think there are some benefits to what we're doing that are broader. There's a concentrated impact on some of the neighbors. That impact dissipates as you get further from the site. The trips spread out on the network, but folks on Woodland will definitely be impacted. With regards to the cut-through potential, we asked our traffic engineer to look at that. The traffic model uses a propensity for trips based on the network, and it found, I think, 0 cut-through traffic. It's a circuitous route. It would cost you more time to cut through the neighborhood than to stay on Foothill and make a left at a signalized intersection and head down Lorraine. Couple other things here. The traffic signal, the question about adding a traffic signal at San Jose, I think, Alex, maybe you can talk about that. But the issue is that it's already at a level of service E. And so it's already bad. I've sat there. It's bad during concentrated peak times in the morning and the evening. I think, Alex, you can talk about whether or not it's even feasible to add another signal on Foothill Drive or Foothill Boulevard there between Valley View and Lorraine. I think that's it. I just want to touch on a few of those items. And again, we're grateful for the participation of the neighborhood. And we do understand that there is an impact. We're grateful that Eric brought another side of the story out. 7 affordable homes is a big deal. It wasn't mentioned, but these 7 affordable homes, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, they'll sell for about $360,000. It's a very rare opportunity. So, Alex, do you want to address the traffic signal real briefly?
We've run out of your time, unfortunately. Unless it is at my discretion to extend his time to hear a little bit more about the traffic.
Somebody might have a question.
No, but you can close the public hearing, and then during discussion and deliberation, if you want to ask more questions, invite him to answer.
Okay. Okay, so at this time, I will close the public hearing. Do I need to bang this? No? I don't know.
Only at the end.
Only at the end? Beginning and the end, all right. It's been a few years. So I'll close the public hearing and then bring it back to discussion and deliberations from the commissioners here. And then we'll ask our questions, and at the end of that, then we'll request motions and then vote on it. So at this point, I would like to ask Commissioner Koss to pose any questions that she has to the builder, the developer, or staff.
Well, first of all, I would like to thank members of the community for coming here, and I looked at this packet, and this took a lot of work. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you all coming. Community involvement is extremely important, and I know the builder has really done a lot to reach out to the community, and that you've been involved in that. And I always encourage you, I know you said in this packet that some people are kind of afraid to come and speak at these meetings, and I think, hopefully they won't be in the future. It's really important that we always have community involvement. So I appreciate you being here tonight. I do have I know the big issue that everybody's concerned about is traffic. I know there were some issues about trees, and I'm happy to see that there are so many of the existing trees that are being saved, the actual existing mature trees. I know the big issue everybody's concerned about, though, is traffic. My understanding is the reason that we're losing the cul-de-sac where the kids are playing right now is to have the cut-through, and one of the advantages of the cut-through, my understanding would be, the continuation of the street, not the cut-through, would be one of the advantages of that is to make it easier for emergency vehicles and such to come through, right? Because right now, the streets are so narrow. Is that correct? Is that,
San Jose is substandard.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. San Jose is not built to the current street standard width, but Woodland Lane is.
Okay. So that would make it more compliant, is what you're saying? Okay. That's what I wondered. I thought that was one of the things that you had mentioned. And then can we, staff, can we go back to that chart that you had with the traffic? I did have a couple questions about the traffic study that was done. I know traffic is always an issue whenever we have a new development come up, and I know especially because of the nature of this neighborhood. I know living on a cul-de-sac and children playing in the streets, that's important. That's part of your community. And I understand that there's, no, the actual chart where you had the ratings of the letters, this one. So can you explain to me some of these got F? What do those letters mean? What are the ones that got Fs and Es? Is there, like San Jose, it looks like has Fs. San Jose and Foothill has Fs and Es. Is that excessive waiting time at those lights?
So maybe we could have the traffic, this would be a good time for the traffic engineer to answer this question, I think.
Yeah, I don't know who would be the best person to answer that, so.
Yeah, we have the project's traffic engineer as well as we have the city's consulting engineer who peer reviewed it to make sure.
Okay, yeah, that would be great. Whoever's.
I think the traffic
I
engineer
think the
needs to be
traffic
at the ready
engineer would
here.
probably be the best person to answer that. Those Fs happened to pop out at me. And so what does that mean? Does that mean that people are waiting an excessively long time at that intersection?
Well, Fs are kind of bad, like back in school.
Right, that's what I thought. Oh, no, Fs aren't
E's and
good,
Fs.
right?
But to let you know, there are two types of methodologies for analysis. One is for signalized intersections and one is for unsignalized intersections, right?
Okay.
For signalized intersections, you're looking at the average of all the approaches. So you got, people coming northbound, southbound, eastbound, westbound. You average all of that, you come up with an average number, right?
Okay.
So you have the TS, that's traffic signal.
Okay.
The CSS is a cross-street stop, so unsignalized, right? Mm-hmm. So everything that you see on the traffic signals are averaged out, right, for the entire intersection. When you're looking at unsignalized operations, the methodology looks at the worst-case movement. So you're not averaging out the intersection. So for example, if you look at San Jose and Foothill, probably your average level of service on the intersection, you have free flow on Foothill. So those guys do not stop.
Right.
Your average is probably A or B, maybe C. So what you're seeing as the E or F is the guys trying to come out of San Jose, generally, making a left turn out. So they have to wait for the traffic on Foothill to open up. You have to have a gap to come out. So what you're seeing is that movement. And when you have an unsignalized intersection, it's very, very easy to get to E or F. If you have a couple of cars trying to come out on a left turn, 5 cars, and the traffic is heavy, that pushes you to E or F easily.
Right.
But at the same time, we did a separate analysis or a secondary analysis to see if you have enough traffic coming out of San Jose to warrant a signal, and you don't. So it's enough to make it E or F, but you're not at a point to put a signal in.
What is the criteria for getting a signal?
The signal generally, let me think about this. There is a rural conditions, there is a urban conditions. Rural is harder to meet. You need about 100 cars an hour coming out, minimum.
I see. Okay. And it doesn't meet that criteria?
You don't have that. Yep.
Okay.
Per hour.
Okay. I appreciate you explaining it.
No problem.
Because I looked at that and I was like, F, that's not good. I see what, so you're saying there's a lot of traffic, but there's not enough to meet the
That
criteria
is
for a
correct.
light?
That is correct.
Okay.
So the E or F, again, is people coming out of San Jose generally, trying to make a left turn out onto Foothill.
Okay.
So the Foothill traffic is nonstop.
Right.
They have no zero delay.
Okay. Thank you so much. I
You're
appreciate that. Yeah, I do understand the traffic concerns, especially on, the very narrow streets in that neighborhood. And I do understand the concerns about, the culture of the community, right? You have children playing in the streets, and that's something that you don't want to lose. So I definitely understand that. I understand those concerns very much, and I appreciate you bringing them to our attention. I appreciate all the hard work that was put into this alternative plan. But that was my only question.
Okay. Welcome to the commission.
Okay. Thank you for explaining about the traffic signal. And just looking at the analysis, it's very thorough, but I want to look at it from a human perspective as well. I'm thinking that people who live on San Jose, rather than wait to make a left turn onto Foothill, are going to redirect onto Woodland and through those smaller streets. So if a traffic signal isn't warranted, what other measures can we take to reduce speed of the cars going through that might redirect? Is that something that the city?
Yeah, I don't know if that falls to staff or a traffic study recommendation.
Well, and maybe I hadn't, so and maybe.
Because I was going to ask the same thing.
They can ask, a traffic engineer might be able to answer the distribution and how they estimate that. But there was, I think we had a couple slides related to the traffic study where the traffic engineer estimated that about 55% of the trips, I think, were going to go, remain and exit on Foothill Boulevard from San Jose, and about, I think it was, I think it was about 45% of the trips generated would go up to Foothill, and about 55 would go through the, existing neighborhood. And that, I think, generally was the pattern, with the project, with the additional homes. If the speed concern you're talking, your question is about is that are people driving faster than they should? Is that what the?
Well, yes, and also it will have an increased flow through. I don't see the same level of traffic flowing to Foothill on San Jose. I just don't see that happening. I think people are going to redirect. And so I think it's the volume.
Yeah. If it's just a question of the speed, one the applicant did point out, which emphasizes the design of the new street that's being created does have like 3 or 4 chokers, which will help narrow the traffic, which slows it, as well as there's the bend.
Okay.
So those principles alone are kind of traffic calming devices that will help reduce speed of the vehicles.
Okay.
Okay.
So that was one.
Actually, before you get to that next question, to follow up on that, I'm not sure they answered your question. You're asking what can mitigate the pass-through, and you're talking speed. I'm not sure you were talking speed as much as what could be done to minimize pass-through on Woodland.
Yes, I don't know if it's feasible to.
If there's anything.
Right.
Yeah.
One other question that I did have related to the intersection at San Jose and Foothill is related to safety. Now, this site is a block from the high school, so I imagine that there's a lot of high school pedestrian traffic along that sidewalk, and it seems that the intersection doesn't have an adequate sidewalk or crosswalk. And I'd like to know if the city has any plans to improve that that crosswalk as part of their accessibility and safety plan.
No, right now we don't. There is sidewalk. You're right. There are gaps. There are a number of gaps in sidewalk not being there on Foothill Boulevard. Between the high school and the village. There is sidewalk all the way from from the village to the high school on the north side of the street, however. I think just the way the area developed, sections of the area were built out without sidewalk. And in many of those areas, I don't even know if the city, there are areas that would require dedication of land on Foothill to build out all the sidewalk, might involve removing of oak trees. And so I'm not aware of, I don't believe that the city definitely doesn't have on its capital project plan right now to, build out all of the sidewalk between like the high school and, let's say, Glendora Avenue. There aren't any plans to do that right now.
Okay. Would you mind pulling up the site plan? Thank you. I see here down by the flood control channel that there's a Lot D that it looks like a portion of it is not being developed. Does that remain part of the city's responsibility as far as maintenance?
It is city-owned, so it would be maintained by the city.
Okay.
I'd also add that a large portion of Lot D is part of the Los Angeles County Flood Control District's area where the channel is, and they do maintain that area. There are a number of areas along the flood control channels it's not wholly owned by Los Angeles County. There are some areas that are privately owned that cover the wash, and for example, this area, and the city owns, actually there are a few areas through the city where the city owns property where the flood control channel easement is. And so the city would, part of the arrangement is what we're planning is the city would retain ownership of that portion of the flood control channel, which we currently own right now. So we would, because it's not usable as part of the development and it's encumbered by an easement for the flood control channel, the city would just continue to own that area.
And one other item that I saw was redlined was regarding the water upgrades from a 6-inch to an 8-inch diameter. Is that something that the city has part of their scheduled upgrade? And is that why it's not required for this project?
Yeah, actually that is part of the concessions for the development of affordable units. That's under state law. The developer is able to take advantage of that and has requested that from the city. So any upgrade to the water line would be a responsibility of the city to handle.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Faber?
Yep, thank you. I'd like to also echo Commissioner Costa's sentiment that the community coming out and talking about these things and keeping it in your sights is what makes the community of Glendora better and continues to make it better. Also, so I'd like to say good job on that. I also think, say that to the developers too, continuing to meet with the community and do things is how things get better and work on it. So I did have a few questions. Maybe for Brian, you could take this first one. They talked a little bit about an alternative plan, but I see that in this document. I heard you mention it, but this is what's submitted. Can you maybe give us the 30-second answer of why this was submitted versus the alternative plan? Hi.
John Reekston with the Olson Company. There was never a second plan. I think the
Yeah,
discussion.
just to clarify, you're talking about the plan that the
I don't
citizens
know.
submitted?
I've just heard people say alternative plan.
Yeah.
From the
Sure.
residents?
Yeah, that came up.
Just want to hear
That
their
came up
answer.
at the public. That came up at the public meetings. Is there any way to maybe divide the traffic half out this way,
Sure.
half out the other way? Is that possible to do? The question was asked. But in working with the city through the process, this was the plan that was supported.
Okay.
Is it physically possible? It may be, but we haven't really studied it. But could it happen? Potentially.
Sure.
So just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, perfect. This is the plan that was submitted. I do have another question, at least maybe I think the traffic engineer, it could just maybe clarify. I just want to hear you talk a little bit more about that San Jose intersection. And, well, I'll give you all three of my items, and then you could address them in how you want. The San Jose intersection, maybe talk about that signal a little bit. From my understanding, I believe, shorter streets like this is what calms the traffic speed, right? So this is the idea of not having a straight pass through is what builds speed, but maybe you could talk about that a little bit. And then so I wrote it down and then I forgot it. Oh, and then if we go back to that other chart, maybe you could briefly talk about that because we saw the E's and the F's in the proposed study. But what I saw too, and you can clarify on this, is they are E's and F's right now as they sit. So maybe you can just talk to those 3 points.
Good evening. I think I forgot to introduce myself last time. Alex Tabrizi with Matt Engineering. We did the traffic study for the project. So the San Jose signal, it's E or F, as you mentioned, under existing conditions. We add some traffic, so we make it a little worse, but it still remains the same letter grade. So even without the project, that condition is still there. We added the project trips, and based on the thresholds that are set by, these are national warrants that the Institute of Transportation Engineers has developed. Also, it's used by the Caltrans or California Department of Transportation. So based on those warrants, you are not meeting, which is the minimum level of volume that you need to put a signal, you're not meeting that. So imagine this, if you're not meeting that for the peak hour, you're also not meeting it for the rest of the day. So the rest of the day is actually probably a better condition compared to peak hour, but even peak hour, you don't need it. So the rest of the day, you definitely don't need it. And you probably don't want to put a signal there to stop the traffic on Foothill throughout the entire day just to get people in and out for a short period of time. Now, with the connection, there is the chance to use the intersection at, I believe it's Stephan, is it signalized? So with this connection, we're giving access to Stephan, which connects to Lorraine, and it's a signal. It's actually pretty underutilized at this point. You can see the level of services are way down in the A grade, 2-second delay. So definitely has the capacity to take that. One thing I wanted to mention, generally speaking, you do need a traffic study when a project generates 50 or more peak hour trips. Some agencies, they go all the way up to 100 peak hour trips. This project generates 40 peak hour trips, so it's even below the threshold for requiring an analysis. But just to make sure we analyze every situation that we have here, including the roadway connection, we went through and did this, full-on traffic study. The traffic at the intersections coming out of the neighborhood are currently not a lot. So no matter how you slice and dice this, it's just not a lot to move around. So even if you say, let's say another 20%, goes here, still not going to make much of a difference, right? It's kind of splitting hairs. So that's kind of what's happening in general with the traffic study. Now, in terms of the speed, speed could be, you have open roadway, low amount of traffic, you got a straightaway. So those are the things, characteristics psychologically. Drivers, they tend to speed when they have a certain roadway condition. There are things that can be done to reduce it, like traffic calming measures. Just by striping, you can cut or narrow it, identify, parking lanes. It psychologically shrinks the road width, and people will tend to slow down. So there are things that can be done. Now, once you add more traffic, also you can say the speeds should reduce a little bit. So if speed is an issue, the traffic, it's not a lot to make everything, crap out per se, but it could also help with the speeding if there is a situation. I haven't identified any speed issues, but if that's the case. And your question on the ENF, it's correct. It is existing conditions.
Okay, thank you. Also want to kind of talk a little bit about site, good with the traffic, you're good. The perimeter walls around the existing homeowners, what is that material going to be, or what are you guys doing there in the development? So the walls that basically border an existing homeowner.
Evening, Commissioners. My name is Peter Duarte. I'm with Studio Pad Landscape Architecture. Around the perimeter, we have a combination of tan block wall, and facing the public, we have one-sided stucco, so that it's got a consistent feel and look throughout the internal community.
So any of the existing homeowners that have whatever type of fence they have now will get a new tan block?
Right now, currently shown as a consistent tan wall,
Okay.
masonry block wall.
Perfect.
Along the perimeter.
Thank you. My last comment, but not necessarily needs a response, but personally myself, if I'm looking at the site plan at the end of the cul-de-sac with the circle in the middle of the street with the tree, I think I'm not really a fan of those. I think we have some of them in the city, and if the HOA is always going to be there, I get it, but sometimes the HOA lacks in their abilities, and I'm not talking next year or 5 years, I'm talking 40 or 50 years from now. And as you know, the city's been here a long time, is going to continue to be here, hopefully. So my one comment would be, potentially think about removing that from the center of that cul-de-sac. Otherwise, that's all I have.
Thank you, Brian. Okay. Is staff or the developer aware that the CEQA component for traffic study, I don't know if it's been signed by the governor or not, is being rendered not needed anymore? And will it affect this project in any way, shape, or form?
So I think you're referencing the governor just signed a new law as part of the state budget bill yesterday.
Correct.
You're
And in
talking-
a
you're talking
situation
about-
like this, a traffic study would not even be needed.
So what that law did is actually it increased the acreage and actually broadened the range of infill development. And this would be infill development because you're building within a otherwise developed existing development area, not a greenfield. That projects like this that are housing projects would be statutorily exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, meaning there would be no analysis under CEQA, including a traffic study or any other types of studies that are associated with CEQA. However, cities or development would still have to go through the same permitting and review processes. It just allows the developments to get an exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act.
But if this project came along 6 months from now, we wouldn't even be seeing a traffic study, correct?
Well, even now, a traffic study like this, although this style of traffic study was once required by the California Environmental Quality Act. So about 10 years ago, the state, they've passed a number of laws that are meant to facilitate development, particularly housing development, because as we've all heard, there's a shortage of housing. Housing's expensive. And so the state has done a lot of things to streamline the development of housing. They also, in that same vein, they actually changed the analysis they don't do level of service under CEQA anymore. That hasn't been the case for about 7 or 8, I think almost 10 years maybe. So there's what's called a vehicle miles traveled analysis, which requires you to mitigate vehicle trips. And I believe this project we did run it through our VMT analysis tool, and it was screened out because the number of trips was not large enough to require mitigations. We did this type of analysis. This was really selective because, 9 times out of 10, the major concern about development, particularly infill development, is always it's either traffic and or parking or both. And so in anticipation of that, as well as the feedback that we got from the Olson Company and their outreach, the staff and the Olson Company together elected, say, we need to have a traffic study done so we can explain, what's going on, to the neighborhood and, try to address those concerns through a traffic study. So this was elective, not required.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Where does speed factor into the traffic study? Like the speed on Foothill Boulevard with people exiting on San Jose, is any of that taken into consideration, or is it just cars? at the posted speed limit or?
So the network that we built, you do input the travel speeds, but more than anything, you're looking at the choke points, which are the intersections, and that is a factor of demand versus capacity. So the number of cars coming, the number of left turns, throughs, and right turns at each approach, right? You have your northbound approach, southbound, eastbound, westbound. How many cars you got? So how many left turners you got, right? And then how many left turn lanes do you have? So that's kind of what it's based on. So not so much travel, it is a part of the equation, but more than anything, it's capacity versus demand
Okay.
at the
Thank you.
intersection.
I'm assuming that it was Steve who put this alternative plan together here with the charts and appendices and all of that. That's good stuff. You put a lot of work into that. I'm very impressed.
Am I allowed to comment again on it, or am I done?
No, unfortunately, you're done, Steve. Okay. I guess this is a question for the developer or staff. What, if anything, in this was incorporated? I understand that. I understand the residents came up with this, but this has probably been around in these concerns expressed since day one. I'm curious if any of these got incorporated at all. And I guess I'm asking staff.
So this is exact, we knew that the traffic, was the major concern, which is the reason we did the traffic analysis. To try to demonstrate the volume of traffic, the impact on intersections, based on the plan.
Okay, so, but we did a traffic study to basically refute most of this or to ease their minds.
That was the reason, to help illustrate the full picture of what was happening.
Okay. I know there was some talk about a third exit or entrance. I went and looked at those areas, and you're exchanging one group of citizens who aren't happy for another group of citizens who aren't happy. So I sympathize with you, but somebody's going to be disgruntled at the end of it anyway. I also want to say I live in the area of the Monrovia Nursery where they're just finishing up putting in a total of about 1,500 homes, a little less than that. And I've looked at a lot of these traffic studies, and the residents in my neighborhood, we were all sure that traffic was just going to be the death of us. It was just going to ruin our neighborhood. It's a little bit of a change, yes, but I'm here to tell you, it won't be as bad as you think it's going to be. And I see you shaking your head, and I realize that, but 1,500 homes versus 41 is night and day. Honestly, it really is. It won't be as bad as you think it's going to be. It's still an upset to your way of life right now. It won't be as bad as you think it's going to be. Have there been any accidents on Foothill in San Jose, entering or exiting there?
So actually, we did contact the police department about reported accidents, and there was a collision, a vehicle, not a person-involved collision, in 2019. That's the only one that was reported.
I don't think speed is necessarily going to be an issue here. I think the cutting through, and I commiserate with them with the stuff, vehicles cutting through. I can absolutely see that happening. Like Commissioner Jarvie mentioned, there's a traffic study, and then there's a bit of reality that needs to be peppered in there a little bit. Someone mentioned speed features. Is that feasible? I mean, where would they go on San Jose? Would they go on Woodbury? Would they go on?
So we've already designed traffic calming measures into the project. We met with the Public Works Director, made a special request to create chokers. So the street width, I think, is 36 feet. and we choke it down to 22 feet at 3 different locations. That forces vehicles to slow down because you have to get through a narrow little pinch point. And then we've also, well, the design inherently has curves, and curves slow speed as you're exiting, as you're making the corner. And so those are the primary measures that we've designed into the project.
Thank you. You want to stay here for a second. During your presentation, Brian, you brought up some figures, some economic benefits for the area. Is that something we can pull up there? I'm curious as to...
Thank you. It's right at the end.
Yeah, I'm curious as to where you got the full-time equivalent jobs, 164 for 41 houses?
That's a good question. There was
And I'm not understanding during construction, during business and personal income of $11 million, what is that figure? How is it derived as?
So these are all based on a 2015 study that was commissioned by the National Association of Home Builders. So they retained an economist, and the goal of the study was to look at one home. What's the economic activity of one home? So these are actually in 2015 dollars. I didn't inflate them, so they're 10 years old. But the economic activity, the value of the construction contracts, primarily is the business and personal income that's generated during construction. And then the jobs would be full-time equivalent. Obviously, we're not hiring full-time people to be there every day. A drywaller might be there one day. A plumber or carpenter might be there another day. They take all that into account and create just basically a factor how many jobs per home constructed.
So are you claiming 164 full-time equivalent jobs in Glendora, or just Southern California or the state of California, or?
Those would be wherever they live. They're commuting here to work on the home. So those aren't physically jobs here in Glendora.
Oh, so those are construction, that's construction incomes you're
Correct.
talking about there?
Correct.
Okay. Is it, okay. Is there, what's the next slide? Can you bring the next slide up? There was another one, wasn't there? No? Okay, that was my main question, though, was that, were you claiming 164 jobs for the city of Glendora? Or you're not?
I'll leave the study here for you.
Thank you.
Sure.
I think it's a pretty good site. I think the neighborhood will do well with that site there. I think it's largely pretty well thought out. I understand the concerns of the neighborhood. I wish there was some way to mitigate the concern at Foothill and San Jose to reduce any pass-through traffic going back out to Leodora. I don't know that there is or there can be. So I guess at this point, I'll. Oh, I'm sorry. Recognize Commissioner Koss.
Yeah, I just wanted to make one more comment. I know there was a lady, I think she's the lady in back there in the burgundy. You were talking about affordable housing. And one of the things that I think is good about this project is it does have 7, not necessarily low-priced housing, but what they call moderate housing. Although I think what was it, a 3-bedroom house for, what did you say, $300,000 or something for a 3-bedroom house? I mean, I paid $300,000 for my 2-bedroom condo, so $300,000 for a 3-bedroom house is pretty good. So, there's going to be 7 of those units. So I think that that's a positive step in terms of getting some more affordable housing. So I just wanted to mention, because I know you had a concern about that. So I just kind of wanted to bring that up, that I'm glad to see something a little more affordable.
Okay, with that, I guess I'll ask for a motion.
Yep. I'd make a motion to approve with the condition that during the process, you look at that little tree circle in the cul-de-sac, and if it goes away, it wouldn't affect my vote. I don't know how to say it particularly. If it goes, I'm not saying it has to go away. I'm saying that if it goes away during planning process with Mark and team.
So are you recommending to remove, does the recommendation include
Just to
removal?
study it further, and if it were to be
Maybe
removed.
recommend further study on the need and
Yes.
maintenance aspects for
Perfect.
that
So
landscaping.
I'd like to make a
circle?
motion to approve with the condition that you continue study for the need of that circle, tree circle for maintenance and traffic.
Can I add on to his motion?
Okay, I think maybe make each separate, just to have it clear for the record. So we'll start with the
Yep.
motion you're gonna make.
Do you want me to say it again?
Yes, like,
I'm going to make a motion to approve the project with the condition to continue to study the need for the tree circle in the cul-de-sac on San Jose in regard to maintenance, long-term maintenance, and/or just need to have it.
Can I ask a question? We didn't actually discuss that. Is that something you're putting in the motion just because you don't like it? Or is that something?
sorry, so to clarify, so first let's do a motion for this without the approval of the revised resolution, but just on the recommendation you're asking for.
Okay.
And that, like, step by step.
Okay.
It's not that big a deal. I can take it out.
I guess I'm curious as to why we're making.
Well, before discussion, we should see if that motion can generate a second.
I got you. I'd like to make a motion that they continue to study the need for the traffic circle in the cul-de-sac due to maintenance and/or need for the ability to have it.
Do we have a second? Seeing none, that motion fails.
Perfect. I'd like to make a motion to approve the project.
I'll second.
Sorry, but can you actually read the both aspects, so adopting the categorical exemption?
Thought that's on his part. I'm not the chair anymore.
Okay, well,
Well,
at
but-
least
but-
to make a motion to approve the revised resolution, so the one with the red lines that was made publicly available
But
tonight.
I'd like to make a motion with a caveat as well.
You just make
So
the
right now we
motion
just have for the
caveat
original,
first.
with the
See if we can
revisions.
second it.
I'd like to make a motion to approve, but with a caveat, to study the traffic, the flow-through traffic one more time. I think the citizens have done enough work here to warrant another look-see at it.
I'll second that.
So you have to make a motion on the study first, right? Or is it saying?
Yeah, so,
Can't
because
approve it
he
and-
technically, Commissioner Faber
see
made
if
a
we
motion
approve
to
the
approve the
condition.
project, and you,
So I have to
did
make a,
any
I make a motion to look at the pass-through traffic on this project.
Is it recommend?
I will
And just to
second.
clarify, is it a recommendation for a project approval with further study? Or is it just recommend continuance of the project?
Well, that's what I was saying. I recommend to approve the project, but I want somebody to look at it one more time for the citizens.
What does that mean, look at it? I can't vote on an amendment if I don't, what does that mean? To
I mean,
look at the traffic?
Just, I mean, you're making a recommendation to city council, so you could word it in a
Correct.
way.
This would be to the city council. I think the citizens have shown enough interest tonight that they're concerned enough with pass-through traffic. And I got to kind of agree with them. San Jose is going to be a mess up there, and they're going to turn around and they're going to go back the other way. I think it deserves one more look-see. How you want me to word that, I'm unsure.
So you want to word, you want I think you're trying to formulate a motion to do additional traffic analysis or have a traffic engineer do additional analysis. Do you want to specifically look at the corner of San Jose and Foothill? Or is that or are you looking for?
No, I want them to study the traffic flow from from Foothill at San Jose all the way on out to Leodora.
To Lorraine.
Lorraine, I'm sorry.
I guess can I ask? Because they did do a study, so I'm not sure what additional would be.
Right, that's what I'm asking. What do you want, when you say look at it again, what does that mean?
They're looking at the same thing. It's just math.
Well, they They talked about a gate, and they didn't do the gate. Is there anything else besides a gate, a choke point? Or I'm not sure how to get the flow to be as equal in both directions as they can without some of it turning around. I know it said 45, 55, but I don't believe that will actually be reality because of the increased traffic at San Jose and Foothill.
So what,
These people live here. They know what the traffic is like in their neighborhood.
so how does he do that then? If he's going to change, I don't know how you word that then.
Do you want to?
I don't think it hurts anything to look at how the traffic flows between the old neighborhood and the new neighborhood one more time. Whether
that
that's a
your-
new traffic study.
So you're talking about how the traffic, how the travel of cars is distributed in the neighborhood?
Correct. Right now, it says 55, 45. I don't know if there are any measures that can be taken to keep it at 55, 45. And I don't know that you can ensure that through any study or not. But I think reality tells me, I've seen enough of them, that, again, I think they're going to turn around, they're going to go out to Lorraine.
Before we discuss this, don't we have to have a motion?
Yes, you should have a motion and a second.
Which
That's what we're,
Harvey did motion for that one. So I have the current one. Do they vote for that one first, or do they vote for the other one?
well, we're trying to figure out what his motion is.
Yeah, because
What does that mean to take a look at? I mean, I don't know what that means.
I don't know how to say it any plainer. I'm looking for a way
Do you want them to do another
satisfy
study?
the citizens' concerns. If
So-
there's anything that can help mitigate traffic turning around and going out to Lorraine.
What,
So maybe before we consider additional motions and amending the Olson Company passed a note about wanting to raise the issue of SB 330, which is part of the Housing Crisis Act of 2019, I believe. So if I could have Mr. Reeks, if the chair is
that
okay
they
with
haven't
this.
already done.
Yes, please.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out some matters under state law that might be pertinent to the request. First of all, any requirement that might come out of that study that would result in bifurcation of the site or a turnaround or something of that nature could result in the removal of homes. And so that would place a financial burden on the community overall and Olson's inability to move forward with the transaction, which under the Housing Accountability Act and under Senate Bill 330, the city may not do or be subject to substantial fines if that were to occur. Since there's no health or safety issue requiring that, there's no basis to impose such a condition upon further study. Also, Olson can use a waiver under state density bonus law to forestall the imposition of such a requirement based on the study that's been done and the fact that there's no health or safety issues. The deadline's passed for the city to identify an inconsistency in the traffic plan that would require a change in circulation, and that might impact the number of units or the size of units and the financial viability of the plan. And even if there were a public safety, health and safety impact, if it could be mitigated through any other measure outside of bifurcation of the traffic, it would have to be done so. If there was no effect on the overall viability of the plan to produce 41 units with 7 moderate income units. So there's several matters under law in terms of timing and what might come out of that further analysis that where the time has passed and would put the city in violation of state law. So I just want to point that out with that motion. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All righty.
Can I make a comment, or no? Can I?
Chair recognizes Commissioner Faber.
So I think, as I understand it, is the developer did a traffic study and did a traffic study that they really did not need to because it's less than the 50 units even required. So they went out on their own, hired this consultant, had them look at the different areas, found that, it wasn't going to be a considerable impact to adding these homes. Now, I get it, there will be a considerable impact to the 10 homes or 12 homes on Woodland, 5 homes on Woodland, and probably most of them are actually half of them are gonna come from San Jose too, when they realize that they can drive out that way. So they're gonna come from existing homeowners in the community already, not the development itself. The development itself is minor to the traffic
Correct.
study that's been presented here, and that can be, that will be affected by this project. So I'm not sure what else they could even do to look at this traffic study, and I'm not sure what they could do to change their design of the community to make it do that. It's not a private homes, it's not a gated community, it's nothing like that. So I just wanted to kind of see discuss to the commissioners kind of what I'm seeing through my eyes, so.
I agree. I think they've had several meetings with the residents and addressed a lot of the traffic issues, and so they've had several community meetings where they've talked about traffic at the community meetings, and they've, done a traffic study, so.
How many people here are from San Jose? How many people here live on San Jose?
I would like to make a motion to, at this time, in the interest of time, I would
No.
like to make a motion that we approve
We need
this.
we need to recognize there's still a motion on the table.
Which motion is still on the table?
I withdraw my motion.
Okay. I would like to make a motion that we approve.
We still have the one that Brian first made, which
I'll
was,
withdraw my motion too.
okay?
Okay.
Actually, to recap, I believe the motion that Commissioner Faber put forward failed to go forward for lack of a second.
Right.
Correct.
And the motion that Commissioner Davis put forward did not obtain actually, there was a second. There was a second. So it was withdrawn. Okay.
Okay. So I would like to make a motion to approve, do you want me to read all this? The resolution of the City Council of the City of Glendora approving a tentative track. Do I read that?
No, I think I
Did you
read it.
read
I
it?
think
Okay.
we vote and then I read it.
Okay. So yeah, I make a motion that we approve it. Is anybody second?
Does he have to read it first?
For the record, go ahead.
Yeah.
You gotta read it.
Okay, before we have a second?
Yeah, you have to read it.
All right, so there's a motion to recommend action for the planning commission, that the planning commission recommend to the city council consideration of the following related to the project file number PLN 24-0045. Number one, adopt a categorical exemption pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act for the project, and adopt a city council resolution entitled, "A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Glendora, California, approving tentative tract map number 84681 for subdivision of land to create 41 detached single-family residential homes and development plan review for the construction of the homes on certain property located at 263 San Jose Drive, assessor numbers 8655-007-900, 8655-007-902, and 8655-021-900, located at the terminus of San Jose Drive and Woodland Lane, Glendora, California. Project file number PLN 24-0045. Applicant, the Olson Company, property owner, City of Glendora.
I'll second the motion.
Can you please clarify if the motion is made to recommend approval of the resolution subject to the revisions that were made publicly?
Yes, that was my motion, that we, subject to the conditions that were already agreed upon.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Oh, so we're voting on here, correct?
Correct, yes. So if you guys can submit your vote. Motion carries 4-0.
All righty. Well, that closes that chapter. So I guess now we move to the consent calendar. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for coming out tonight. I'm sorry it didn't go the direction you wanted it to. Just, if It won't be as bad as you think.
They don't.
Okay, so moving on to the consent calendar.
Should we recess for a minute to let them,
I'm sorry?
should we recess so that, give them a moment if they want to leave?
Yes, we'll take a 5-minute recess. Thank you.
They said what?
July 1st meeting back into order. Okay, items on the consent calendar will be enacted by one motion without individual discussion unless a commissioner has requested it be removed for separate discussion. Does anyone wish to comment on item number 4? Item number 4 being affirmed minutes from the June 3rd, 2025 Planning Commission meeting. I have nothing. All right, seeing nothing, I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Call for a vote.
Call for a vote.
Motion carries 4-0.
Motion carries 4-0. Okay, item number 5, new business. Adoption of the Glendora Station Area Vision Plan, PLN 22-0059. I'd like to invite Principal Planner Hans, I'm never sure, is it Friedel? Friedel, that's right. I'll put that on the end of it, so, take it away, Hans.
All right, well, good evening, commissioners, and we're here tonight, as you mentioned, seeking your recommendation to the city council on the adoption of the Glendora Station Area Vision Plan. This is the culmination of roughly 2 years of work, going back to the original funding agreement. Just a little bit of background before I dive into the slides here. The Glendora Station Area Vision Plan is a comprehensive land use development strategy for the area within the 1/2 mile radius of the Glendora Station, which is going to open imminently, focusing on housing. It aims to leverage the transit and mobility enhancements surrounding the station, outlines a development vision through various scenarios, and identifies the regulatory adjustments required to realize those scenarios. The plan also establishes an urban design framework that promotes a pedestrian and transit-friendly environment while addressing the city's housing needs. This vision was shaped through an extensive public engagement process, which I'll outline in a moment here. It includes meetings with property owners, stakeholders, LA Metro staff, and Glendora's Planning Commission and City Council members. So, before I get too far into this, I do want to just quickly go over the study area again to kind of orient ourselves. So the vision plan focuses on the 1/2 mile radius around the Glendora Metro Station, further refined to include only those parcels deemed through research and analysis to have the highest likelihood of redevelopment within about the next 10 or 20 years. So I'm kind of looking over my shoulder behind me here, which is hard to do, but that area within the 1/2 mile around the station accounts for around 1,200, just over 1,000 of the 2,500 or so housing units that the city's committed to facilitate in the housing element, which has been certified by the state. So around 45% of the city's regional housing needs assessment is within this 1/2 mile area. And just for some orientation, I can see here, the diagonal line kind of going from the upper left down through this dotted is the Metro Rail line or A line. And then Glendora's Village is running, Glendora Avenue is running sort of north-south right through the middle, and that the circle in the middle is the station itself. And we'll have a lot more graphics that show this as we move on here. So why plan? So the plan opens with a quote from Seneca, which I love, which is luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. And that's what the vision plan represents. It's a preparation at a unique and probably generational intersection of different planning opportunities and challenges, including, the A-line extension. The arrival of the A-line or Gold Line formerly, and creation of a new light rail station in Glendora is kind of a once-in-a-generation transportation opportunity, transit, perhaps once in a lifetime for our community. It's the most significant transportation investment in Glendora since the 210 freeway expansion came out here. Number two, the certification of Glendora's 6-cycle housing element. So, certified in 2023, the housing element commits Glendora to planning for roughly 2,600 new housing units. 1,200 of those are within this area around this station. Regional best practices show that the highest opportunities for both housing and jobs are in transit-rich areas. 3, the Glendora Economic Action Plan outlines strategic goals and performance measures to support a strong local economy. Things like attracting new restaurants, supporting businesses, retention of existing businesses, and enhancing the quality of life are all in there. The vision plan builds on those ideas. 4, the Glendora 2023 to 2025 strategic plan, Objective 4 of the strategic plan explicitly called for creating a vision and development plan for the Village Gold Line area, including tasks to develop concepts for future housing and commercial development, and identify key sites for targeted growth, which we tried to roll some of that into this plan as well. So a note on funding to LA Metro here. So the 5th sort of opportunity or component that happened here was in 2022, LA Metro had what we call Talk Tap, if you hear that, but it's the Transit-Oriented Communities Technical Assistance Program round of funding. And so they were offering up to $200,000 to cities for technical planning assistance aligned with their goals, and it was run like a grant application. So Glendora applied for and successfully received the full $200,000. And our sort of agreement was how to accommodate housing for all income levels within this half mile of the station using a context-sensitive, community-driven approach. So additionally, Glendora committed $20,000 or 10% in local match funds in terms of staff time, which we've much exceeded, and we've invested more than that in terms of our time. So those are some of the intersection of things that happened to get this plan started. So just a kind of an overview of what the vision plan is and is not, because this comes up a little bit. So what it's not a rezoning. Let's start on the right side here. It's not a regulatory document. It's a vision. It's not a development project or approval or site-specific development plan. And it's not the authorization for any building or construction. So it's conceptual in nature with recommendations. What it is an illustration of the city's aspirations, a set of development scenarios based on real-world data, an analysis, which Placeworks will talk about more, a roadmap for what regulatory adjustments would be needed to realize these scenarios, and a long-range vision for how Glendora might grow around the station area over the next 10 to 20 years, as I alluded to earlier. So talk about public engagement here quite a bit. So this plan was created through a scenario-based planning process, identifying the problem, setting clear criteria, analyzing conditions, and exploring alternatives and selecting preferred scenarios. Public outreach was baked into this entire process. We did a lot considering the scope and budget, and a substantial part of that was dedicated to public outreach. So when I say we did a lot of public outreach, I mean a lot. So in fact, we've discussed this. We did more public engagement for this plan, which covers less than 1 square mile of the city than we did for the housing element, which affects the entire city, as you may know. And that's not to say we didn't do a lot for that either. A lot of that was baked into this entire project. So a summary of that is, and there's some graphics here showing some of the things that we did, but we did 2 open houses. One was in person, one virtual, and I think some commissioners may have attended one or both. We've had booths at 2 Earth Day events, including the rainy one this year, with different handouts and interactive things there and brochures. We had 2 rounds of brochures mailed to all property owners and key businesses within the planning area. So for each of those meetings, they got like a brochure that had a link to the website and when the meetings were and stuff like that. We had posts and invites via social media and city channels like the webpage. There was a presentation given to the downtown bid. And then this is kind of interesting. I think this is maybe a first for us. There was a dedicated plan website with meeting info, videos, and a full copy of the draft plan with commenting tools. So people could comment on any page of the plan or on the plan in its entirety on the website. And at the virtual meeting, we actually went through, Placeworks did a demonstration for those attending of how to actually use this stuff. So there was an online survey promoted citywide and via social media. And then I think we did 2 planning commission study sessions as well about this. So again, one of the most intensive planning related public engagement efforts Glendora has undertaken. Here's something with the website. There was a couple hundred, almost 300 unique visitors. That's not including the social media survey stuff. Then these are some graphics from some of the different, open houses and different things we did, kind of illustrating what I was talking about. And then the plan itself, I think this is kind of neat. Credit to Placework for doing this, but there's each of the comments, and you can't read them on the slide because they're too small, but they're in the plan. Every comment we received got like a bubble in the plan. So actually the public engagement is baked into the document itself. So you can see the questions, concerns, comments, things people had. And then, not our job to be, necessarily respond or rebut those kinds of things, but there are responses to each one where it says, hey, this section of the plan talks about this issue or noted or something like that. So, in terms of timeline, we're at the, I mentioned that this, started, the grant opportunity was a couple years ago. The plan was designed to take about a year once it got going. And so we entered into this funding agreement with Metro, and then we went through an RFP process and Placeworks got that. And so that took some time. But right now it's, we're at the first public meeting, and then the second one will be city council, which is next week. So I'll be able to report back verbally what happens at this meeting tonight to our city council. And with that, I'll invite, we have Chad So and Alan Loomis with Placeworks here tonight to kind of go over the meat of the plan. And I think Chad is up first, so I'll invite him to the podium. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chad So, and I'm an associate at PlaceWorks, and as Hansen mentioned, we're the consultant that helped develop this plan. So I'll dive into a little bit of the contents and an overview of what's actually in the plan. So the main document consists of 5 chapters: an introduction, a vision chapter, development scenarios, public realm improvements, and an implementation chapter. The plan is accompanied by a series of appendices that provide the technical analysis that inform the plan. So I'll elaborate a little bit more on the study area that Hans briefly went over. It generally focuses a half-mile around the station, the Glendora Metro Station. A half-mile is equivalent to a 10-minute walk, which is about the average time a person is willing to walk to a station. The boundary was further refined to exclude areas that are not likely to change. So, for example, low-density residential areas, are not likely to change, as well as recent development projects like the Avalon Glendora. Some key areas included are the Albertsons Shopping Center, the Civic Center, and Glendora Village, and some key streets included are Foothill Boulevard, Route 66, Glendora Avenue, and Vermont Avenue. And again, to reiterate the housing unit expectations in this area that Han was mentioning, citywide, the housing element expects about a demand for about 2,300 units citywide. The 2021-2029 housing element includes 10 housing element sites within the half-mile radius that could accommodate about 1,300 units, which is about 45% of the city's projected housing demand. This is important because it makes sense that it's near transit, and we have to consider if these sites underperform, this would then put demand elsewhere in the city that may not benefit from being adjacent to a transit station. So I'll go over the process of how we developed the vision. The first step we took was conducting an existing conditions analysis. The analysis included an analysis of land use, community assets, buildings lot coverage, ownership, and utilization rates. The complete analysis can be found in Appendix C of the plan. Following the existing conditions analysis, the next step was to determine which areas are best suited and most likely to accommodate new transit-oriented development. To do that, we assigned each parcel a development opportunity score. The opportunity score is a summation of points assigned to each parcel based on various criteria, such as lot size, lot coverage, ownership, and vacancy. So you can see the criteria listed in the table on the screen here. The higher score the property receives, the more likely the property would attract transit-oriented development. So the higher scoring parcels are shown on the map in the darker blue, which includes the area adjacent and around the Albertsons Shopping Center, as well as some selected parcels in Glendora Village and the Vaughn Shopping Center. Once we had these preliminary sites from that analysis, we then went out to the community and asked what types of development should be encouraged and where should they go. So as you can see, the highest sort of number of votes was the 3-story residential. It was then followed by higher density mixed use. So we kind of got a range of responses there. Okay, so to recap, we reviewed existing conditions, we analyzed development opportunity, and we collected public input. This process informed the creation of development scenarios in selected focus areas. We honed in on 6 focus areas shown on the map in the darker blue. Each focus area has a development scenario that showcases the preferred development capacity. So it's important to note, if we recall, the housing element expects at 80% about 1,000 units. The scenario we're showing here is expected to develop approximately 1,100 units. And in a moment, we'll go through each of these focus areas. So the urban design concept informs the vision and provides a framework for land uses in the station area. The goal of the concept is to attract an attractive, diverse, and vibrant neighborhood with a mix of medium and high-density residential uses within walking and biking distance to the future Glendora station. High-density mixed uses are focused just south of the station at that would provide future residents with convenient transit access. Another medium mixed-use anchor is located at Foothill Boulevard and Glendora Avenue to provide a southern gateway to Glendora Village and to emphasize its adjacency to the Civic Center. Activity nodes shown in the blue stars provide placemaking opportunities such as public art and public plazas, while key connections shown in the green and white arrows include public realm enhancements to facilitate safe and comfortable movement to and from the station and throughout the study area. So the process leading up to the development scenarios and the urban design concept then translated to the urban design vision or illustrative plan. This plan illustrates a possible pattern of development to support a pedestrian and transit-oriented environment. Again, following transit-oriented principles, higher density uses are located adjacent to the station, while smaller scale townhome-style developments are located in other focus areas. This drawing does not require that these specific buildings be constructed on these specific sites, but rather suggests the possibilities the plan creates for property owners. So I'll now pass it over to Alan to go over the development scenarios.
What were the green dots on that slide? Were they trees?
Yes, trees aligning the streets.
Yeah, Alan Loomis, I'm principal at PlaceWorks. As mentioned, we're the consultant to the city. Yeah, these would be sort of diagrammatic trees of kind of the key public improvements, not necessarily the trees to scale. Let's see which arrow. There we go. So I'll go through the different development scenarios that are in the plan, looking at those focus areas that Chad described. I think a couple of, before I jump into the first one and go through the others, just a couple of things to say. Again, we're not trying to project or say that these particular kinds of projects in these particular forms is what should be built on these sites. To a large extent, what we were actually trying to do was sort of to test the capacity of these sites to provide development at a certain scale and make sure that it was in alignment with the housing element expectations. And in all cases, we either match what the housing element expected for that site or we were able to exceed it, in some cases quite dramatically so. So that was one of the kind of key charges that we had in our scope, was to sort of test the housing element assumptions in this area, and also to sort of probe a little bit deeper for other opportunities for affordable housing. It was another piece of the charge that we had. So when we started looking at these development sites, again, going back to Chad's analysis, that we kind of keyed in on sites that seem to have pretty high reinvestment potential, given the scoring criteria we looked at. The next thing we did was we really kind of took a careful look at the actual ownership of those sites. So when we started drawing building footprints, we were, for the most part, trying to be very, very conscious that we were drawing buildings that existed on properties that one particular person or entity controlled. We're not drawing a building that had to cross 4 different property lines and therefore would have to assume that somebody was going to consolidate all those properties and to be able to build one large project. So to some extent, that does mean that the building scales that you see tend to be a little bit smaller and more incremental, which I actually think is an advantage to the community in terms of having smaller scale development that's going to feel more organic and much similar to the village, the scale that you have in the village. if you look at, in contrast to some of the larger scale development that you're seeing west of here, adjacent to the train, where you get very large developments. Now, for focus area A, this is the sites that are directly south of the rail station and adjacent to Albertsons, stretching down Vermont to Route 66, as you can see in the diagram. There are some very large parcels here. The most notable one is the one labeled A1 on this, which is actually controlled by, it's either the Metro controls it or the Joint Powers Authority that built the train owns it. It's under effectively transit agency ownership. So there's one large parcel there. A3 is a site that was listed on the real estate market. We were doing this work. That's another fairly large parcel. And then A4 is another fairly large parcel. So in this area, there's some fairly large parcels that do lend themselves to fairly large scale development, which is what we're showing here. These drawings, these buildings would be similar to that we would call them wraps. They're similar to the Avalon development, which is to say it's going to be somewhere between 4 and 6 stories, wood frame construction of apartments that sort of wrap around a concrete parking structure that's built above grade. These kinds of buildings are very effective and very cost efficient for builders to produce, which is why you see them in a lot of areas in Orange County and the East San Gabriel Valley. We think they do make some sense here. They're large sites, they're directly adjacent to the train, and if you notice on the drawings, you'll see that the outer edge, we're showing like the height of those buildings varying. So we're even suggesting that while it might be 6 stories up against the train, according to Vermont, it might be 4 or 5 stories. So there'd be some kind of articulation of the building scale is what we're recommending. Site A2 here is actually a kind of smaller piece of land that's under separate ownership. And when we looked at that, that does make sense to build out as either the 3-story townhome development that you see all over the San Gabriel Valley, or sort of 3-story walk-up apartments with kind of tuck-under parking, and those building forms fit pretty neatly on those sites. So what this drawing illustrates is another key idea that we took forward when we started looking at all the different development sites, which is to say, we didn't think a one-size-fits-all scenario made sense. That is what you do see in some other transit-oriented plans where everything is all at the same density and you just get, all 4-story buildings everywhere. We think, particularly given this kind of larger context in Glendora that we're looking at, the different scales of buildings make sense on different sites. So this is a kind of good illustration. Even on this very large kind of primed site for transit-oriented development, we think multiple scales of development make sense. The other thing this drawing shows, which is also important on this site in particular, is the introduction of some new kind of streets or pedestrian passageways. So instead of this being one very large development, there's these kind of like streets that take you to the potential kiss and ride in the north and south kind of passageways. Those are generally following property lines. So the builders of these potential buildings are kind of co-building a kind of a street network that breaks the buildings up and provides other access points for pedestrians and vehicles to access this. So it's more of a neighborhood instead of one large project. It's kind of the key idea. Focus area B is directly across the street on Vermont to the west. What this side looks very different is because the lots are much smaller. They're all broken up into individual ownership. So that's why you have 4 individual buildings. They're sitting on individual lots. And these sites also back up to a kind of low-rise, traditional single-family neighborhood. So here, the development scenario that we sort of drew up that kind of takes the best advantage of these lot sizes is 3-story kind of apartments with some tuck under, some parking, and some surface parking. The photo on the upper left here is in the city of Montclair. It's a project called the Alexan Kendry. It's located on Arrow Highway in Monte Vista, if I got my street correct. Very, very nice looking project, and it was kind of the prototype that we sort of modeled across here. You'd be shocked at the rents they're charging for Alexan Kendry, more than my mortgage in Pasadena. Focus area C takes you up Glendora Avenue to Foothill Boulevard. This is directly across the street from City Hall, and is a really important site. It's really like under kind of 2 sort of ownerships. One is the existing 1-story kind of commercial center, the older shopping center there, and then there's a portion that's owned by an adjacent church. So we looked at this as being just an incredible opportunity. We think the city really needs to hold out for the right project on this site because it's across from City Hall with all the kind of symbolic significance that carries. You want to get the right project across from your City Hall. And it's also the south end of the village, which of course is the great asset in downtown. In Glendora is the village and the pedestrian activities that explains. So this is the one site where we were asked to kind of revisit it, our initial drawing that we produced, and sort of elaborate and think a little bit more about this site. And so this drawing, additional kind of supplemental drawing that we prepared, reflects some of the feedback that we got after city staff started talking to other people in City Hall about this particular site and its possibilities. So here we've turned around. We're looking, the village is the pink buildings here. So if you go to the upper left, you're going south and towards the train, so you can see how City Hall sits there. So a couple of the key ideas that come out of this site. One, it's one of the few sites that does make sense for what you would call podium-style development. That is where you have concrete parking structure, maybe underground, and then housing above that concrete structure. It's more expensive than a wrap or the townhome development. One of the advantages that type of construction gives you is that you can actually build fairly large retail or commercial space on the ground floor because you got this huge concrete structure. And so, and other drawings that are not in the slide presentation, we sort of did some studies that right there at the south end of the village, this kind of a building could get you a 10,000 square foot commercial space, which could be a really great anchor to the village. Could be 10,000 square feet is the magic number for like a CVS or a Walgreens. Also happens to be a good number for Trader Joe's, but it could also be like an entertainment venue too. Like if movie theaters really revive, it could be a movie theater too. So that kind of construction lends itself to this sort of anchor, and we think this kind of project makes a lot of sense at the south end of the village. The other feedback we received was to really pull the building back so that green space, you can see there's like a plaza at the end, so there could be some sort of public plaza, publicly accessible plaza that would invite you from the village. So you walk south on Glendora Avenue, across the street. Then there's this plaza that then takes you to whatever that commercial anchor is on the ground floor. There's an opportunity for there to be some sort of tower element that could be kind of an interesting placemaking feature, you know, some taller portion of the building with a clock or some sort of architectural public art component. And then the other piece was to think about sort of bringing the height of the building down as it fronted onto Glendora Avenue down to about 3 stories. So you can see there's a little terrace there in the drawing, which would be a fabulous place to have a roof deck, because imagine you're on a roof terrace in that building and you're looking north to the mountains over the village. Nothing's ever going to be in your way. It just would be pretty extraordinary, I think. So this is a really extraordinary site that the city we think really should hold out to make sure you get the right components in place should the site ever be reinvested. Moving west on Foothill Boulevard, we come to an interesting collection of parcels. This is Focus Area D. There's a fairly large triangular piece of parcel and then a collection of smaller parcels that are directly south of the Vaughn's shopping center. And as you can see, they back up to the Metro line. And this is where the train is starting to elevate on the concrete bridge that goes over the intersection of Foothill and it's Citrus. I'm going to get this wrong.
Grand.
Grand, yeah. I was just there on my way in. So you could actually do quite a bit of housing and even at pretty high densities up against that rail right of way because it's already a big structure and there is no other residential around. So we did one study that looks at doing a wrap structure there. This is an alternative where it's a kind of townhome community. This is the 3-story townhomes. Some walk-up apartments. D3 is that sort of walk-up apartment. D3, D2 on this drawing, these are separate parcels. But everything in D1 is really under one ownership.
Struggling to figure out which way I'm looking at this here. See Foothill.
Yeah, this drawing is looking to the upper right is going to be south. So you're turned around. You're looking from the northwest, southeast across the site. Yes, yeah, more or less. Yeah.
Hostelfreeze. The Hostelfreeze.
Yeah, this is directly south of where the Vaughn's is. Yeah.
And the industrial area around it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of stuff behind there you don't see because it's a very deep parcel and you don't see it from the street. Yeah. A big chunk of that site, yes. This site is currently zoned for industrial, so it's not allowed, housing is not permitted here. So one of the questions we asked with city staff or was exploring is like, well, what could you do here with housing and what would make sense? So we did these two studies to illustrate the possibilities. So this is one where should the city choose to rezone this to allow for housing and the city would really be in the driver's seat about what scale of development and what should happen here. But it has a lot of interesting possibilities. The D1 neighborhood is very similar to the Foothill, the residential neighborhood that's a little bit further west on Foothill that kind of wraps around the animal hospital. So there's kind of precedent on this very street, like within walking distance of a neighborhood of this scale. The next focus area, this is at the very north end of the village. There's a small parcel at the very north end of the village at Glendora and Bennett. Was identified in the housing element for small kind of mixed-use buildings. Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. So we looked at this. This again is kind of the 3-story walk-up apartments with some tuck-under parking. It's got alley access, so you can do some back surface parking that's off the alley. It doesn't really impact the streetscape of the village. The regulations here require that you would have ground floor commercial. That's what the red is indicating. So you extend the commercial retail experience of the village all the way up to Bennett. And then this is actually focus area F. This is a collection of parcels on Route 66 at the kind of the very east end of the study area on the south side of the street. It's mislabeled E, but then if you look at the diagram, it's F. But yeah. So this was another interesting challenge because if there's a I forget how many individual parcels and ownerships. If you're able to consolidate them all under a single ownership, you could do a really interesting project with a lot of different kind of open space configurations. We looked at that. But this drawing is far more reflective of the fractured ownership that this site actually lives under right now. And so there's some interesting possibilities to do this kind of 3-story townhome kind of project on these sites. Again, if sites started to be consolidated, you could probably do something more interesting. But our assumption was that individual property owners would do their own thing, and they may not choose to sell to their neighbors or in some co-develop with their neighbors. The plan also includes, as Chad mentioned, a chapter on public realm improvements. So there's some very kind of conceptual ideas about improvements to some of the key streets. Fortunately for the city, you've already got a pretty robust public improvement plan around the train station, anticipating the train. So there's a lot of projects that are in the works for pedestrian improvements and bike improvements leading to the train. The key street that we really honed in on is Vermont, between the train station going south to Route 66. That's like kind of light industrial street right now. And if you're going to put a lot of housing on that street, which is what we were suggesting in the earlier drawings, we think like a streetscape plan for that street and some trees and sidewalks and all that good stuff is going to be really important. You can imagine there potentially could be quite a number of residents who live directly south of the train station who would come out of their apartments, condos, homes, and walk north up Vermont to get to the train station. And we also have some suggestions about how to deal with these privates, these new streets and that big super block directly south of the station as well. We're really, in this case, really trying to empower the city or kind of give the city the tools to be able to talk to developers who might show up with an interest in the site to say, here's what we expect out of you. There's also then a chapter on implementation. Hans said that the plan is not a regulatory document. It's a vision plan, but we do have suggestions for how the plan could be implemented through regulations. So one of those is a set of ideas that probably will be implemented whenever the general plan land use element is updated next, in terms of introducing some new land use categories that don't exist in the city today. So the two of them they're indicated in the hatch. The first one is a transit-oriented district that would apply to the very large, we kept calling it the super block, directly south of the station, occupied by Albertsons, all the way over to Vermont. Where we think like that site is clearly transit-oriented development. Policies there should be focused on supporting the train and transit development. The other hatching, we debated first whether we should have transit-oriented development 1 and 2, and we finally settled on like, well, let's just call it a mixed-use corridor and suggest that the city should introduce a general mixed-use corridor land use designation that could have applications beyond this half-mile radius around the train station. It might ultimately have some utility on some of the other corridors beyond here should the city move in that direction with the next general plan update. And then there's some suggestions about how those could be translated into zoning categories. So on the table, we're suggesting the transit-oriented development land use category be implemented with a new zone that we called TMU for transit mixed use. And then the mixed use corridor land use districts, we would suggest that that be split into one, at least 2, maybe 3 or 4 separate mixed use zoning districts that would have different density incentive or standards, different land use categories, permitted land use. So we tried to track your existing C1, C2, C3 districts in terms of thinking about the kinds of commercial uses that be allowed in those potential mixed use zones. There is, as you can see in the table, and it's described more in the plan itself, some suggestion that perhaps there could be a kind of framework for increasing density as you get larger lots. So your mixed-use 2 zone, the base would be 40 units an acre, but if you were able to get bigger lots, you could go up to 50 units an acre, maybe up to 60. The logic with that is that as you get a bigger lot, you have more opportunities to sort of massage that density relative to its impact on adjoining uses or the kind of public streetscape. So again, this is a suggestion that the city can entertain. We're kind of outlining the roadmap for future zoning changes, a sort of suggestion. The city would have to go through a whole separate process of amending the zoning code and all that, and debating the sort of details of these standards before this would become effective. But we're trying to provide the pathway for how to think about this. So that cues up to deliver back to Hans to talk about the next steps looking forward.
All right, I'll be brief here so we can get to your questions and comments. So, in long-range planning, we focus on the future and, what do we have to do to get ready for the Glendorans of 2050, or the next 20 years. And this vision plan is a part of a series of efforts, we are working on, which we've reported back on a few of these things, including our objective design standards work, which will be coming soon before Planning Commission and City Council. And that's not just objective design standards for residential, but commercial and all development types, and really is also focused on cleaning up our current code to be more business friendly, sort of streamline and demystify the development process. We have a general plan update, the big one, which we should put an RFP out for, I think, later this year, maybe early 27. And, the city will be embarking on a comprehensive update to its general plan. And then there's all the following subsequent implementation zoning changes and things that have to happen to maps and other stuff to the code to sort of, implement that. And a lot of that is currently getting antiquated. That'll take us out, a few more years, almost to 2030, honestly. And then the next housing element cycle, the next 8-year RENA cycle is they're going to start, I think, releasing RENA numbers in 2027. And, that planning effort will go, that 8th cycle or 7th cycle will go through most of the 2030s, considering the current 6th cycle ends in 2029. So, in conclusion, we talk about, in terms of development opportunities, really getting 3 areas right, I think will shape the city's future success. And that's going to be the Arrow Highway Corridor, Route 66 Corridor, and this area tonight, the 1/2 mile around Glendora Station, which includes our village in downtown, and City Hall, of course, as well. I think capitalizing on these transportation investments and supporting a diverse mix of housing types and sort of a livable community will provide the base that can in turn support more retail, restaurants, things that we like that, jobs if we're lucky, not to mention providing some workforce housing as well. So, I'll finish with this. I started with a Seneca quote, and I'll conclude with a Carl Jung quote, which is, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you don't know, the world will tell you." And I think these efforts are big opportunities for Glendora to broadcast how it wants to develop and who it wants to be. as a city in the future. So thank you. We're here to answer questions and look forward to your comments.
Awesome. Thank you, Hans, and crew. Okay, so at this point, I'll bring it back to the commission here, and I'll start with our newest member down here, Commissioner Jarvie. Questions, comments?
Well, I just had a question, if you can clarify. At the parcel that was adjacent the station that's owned by Metro or the transit agency, currently it's parking, correct? So that would be eliminated, or a portion of it would remain for the Metro
Yeah, that's
riders?
interesting. We can go back to that. Let me see if I can get back to that graphic here. And I don't know if you have any extra insight on this, Jeff, to offer in terms of developments, but I think the idea was eventually for that to start as parking, and then it can be developed later. And so what we showed is that parking basically being wrapped up. And I don't know if, Alan, you want to talk about this scenario specifically, but it basically gets incorporated into this larger development in this scenario that we've shown here. So there's still parking in this scenario for the station, but it's part of this larger development scenario.
On all three of those lots?
No. No, just A1.
Just A1.
That would be like the shared parking, some sort of shared parking agreement in this scenario that we've envisioned here.
So this project envisions, I think you can look at project A1 as the parking lot proper that's been constructed, and LA County Metro, which is going to take ownership of the station. They are a transit agency for Los Angeles County, but they also have a goal, and I think it's part of their, I don't know if charter is the right word, but it's part of what they're supposed to do is to foster the development of housing near their transit stations with some of their parking areas. And so their plan is to, and what they've let us know, in the next, actually probably about 3 years after operation starts, they will look to develop the parking lot with a multifamily housing development of this type of style of housing, probably 4 to 6, story housing. They will endeavor to retain the parking for public for the station on site. They're doing something similar, or they've done something similar in Duarte, where they're building housing on what was the parking. And their plan is to do that actually in all the stations where they have parking along the Phase 2B, which is the sort of Azusa to Pomona phase. And they have a goal, I think it's like 10,000 units by 2035 is what their goal is to do. So we're part of that. So that's A1, that would be that project. The other part to the south is actually surplus that the Gold Line Construction Authority purchased for the construction. Because you had a single owner in that block who owned more than the property that they needed for the parking lot, they purchased more than they needed. So what was the Action Stamping building, and I think a couple of the buildings around it, are currently being offered for sale. I don't know, I think the Gold Line Construction Authority is negotiating with a particular builder for the development of that property right now. And that
Is that the Ace Hardware stuff?
It doesn't include in the Ace Hardware, no. It's the Action Stamping property, as well as I think what was Certified Auto, and maybe a couple other buildings that front on Vermont. So none of that part that the Construction Authority is selling does not include any of what you'd consider the Albertson Shopping Center. So none of the shops, not Ace Hardware, or any of that.
Okay.
So hopefully that helps you kind of get a picture of what's going on there.
And I think I'll just add really quickly that we've been intentional in showing parking for these. We do know that state law has basically taken away our ability to require parking within this 1/2 mile area, but we still, many projects to get funding and stuff like that will include some parking, and we do show that. So.
Commissioner Faber.
Thank you, Hans, for all the hard work and bringing it to us, and I think it's a great plan. Looks like it's a guide to the future of what the market or the conditions may dictate, so thank you for all the hard work.
Thanks to PlaceWorks, too.
Commissioner Koss?
Yes, I echo that sentiment. I know I was at that very rainy Earth Day. I was there with CERT team, so I know how much outreach that you've done to the public on this. I've been involved in some of that. I know it's been a lot of work. Quick question. I don't know, I forget which of the focus areas it is. But
You want me to, do you remember this, like a cross street or something?
yeah, the cross street, right across from the Vaughn Shopping Center.
Okay.
That horrifically blighted building, the old juice factory, like right across from Vaughn's
What am I doing here?
on Foothill and Grand, on the other side of the railroad tracks from Vaughn's. That doesn't seem to be included. It would be not this one. I think it was C or D. That was not included in this. Is there a reason? Because that thing, man, if we get something in there, I will be.
Yeah, it used to be an old upholstery shop.
And then it was a juice place.
Juice place was Naked Juice. That was farther to the
Yeah.
west. But yeah, there's a.
You know that one on the corner?
Right. So
Why is that not included in
so
this?
that most of that area was, of course, redeveloped. You know, that was the old Naked Juice, and Rainbird owned property in that area, and there was most of that area was redeveloped, and so there are a couple little pieces, and actually that one piece, you have the auto body that's remaining, as
Yes.
well as that, and right next to it is the triangular piece on the corner that you're talking about.
Yes, that horrible that's been empty forever.
I think we didn't completely overlook that, to the extent we had conversations about whether or not that was an appropriate site for what we were trying to do within the half mile of the station. It's a it's a tight site. You can't really get that many housing units on it. And my sense is that the development of that or redevelopment of that will happen more organically. It's already zoned for residential in that area. At some point in the future, when the auto body closes and those two properties somehow join together, so we didn't really see that as
More
that.
organically, I mean, that
I think
building
the-
has been empty for.
I did. The bigger
can't
part of
remember
why
how
it
many
wasn't
years.
included was it was outside of the half-mile radius area.
Oh, it is.
It may have
Okay.
been, yeah. if I-
Really?
It's
'Cause
just,
it's across the street from.
if you go to B3, it's just
I
outside.
think it's actually right across the street from Vaughn's, and you go all the way up to Bennett.
Yeah, but look at the dashed circle. That's the half-mile radius.
You're talking about this.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have a pointer, but
Oh, yeah, well, I guess technically,
I'm pointing generally.
it's
in that
right
way.
on the corner of
Yeah.
Grand and
Yeah.
Foothill.
Just right
No,
outside
that
the-
parcel is the little triangle there
Yeah.
within the half mile.
Like the
It is
the point
within
of
the
it.
half mile.
Yeah.
Point of it, yeah.
But in Metro's world, in terms of transit and all that, it would be just barely outside of it.
Yeah, that's tough.
It doesn't mean we don't want that project to
Yeah,
redevelop.
that's
It just wasn't a focus of the
That's
study.
a really tough in
It
and
is,
out
I
on that
get that,
corner.
but
I
that
don't
thing
have
has
any way
been,
to
like,
do anything
vacant
here.
for-
So
That thing has been vacant for like so long.
We didn't talk about it a lot. I think we went over it, but there was a scoring system developed about what sites we really analyzed and felt scored well enough to have a higher probability of redeveloping. And so that's how these sites emerged.
We also tried to, so there's, that was looking at the value of the,
Right, yeah, it's probably
yeah,
pretty small.
looking at the value of land and improvements on it, that probably would score pretty high. But we
Yeah.
also tried to use some natural streets as boundaries and stuff, so like not hop over Grand and things
So
like that.
who owns, like, who's taking care of like weed abatement and all that kind of stuff at that property now?
So that property is privately owned. It's not
Okay.
owned by a government entity. And it is vacant.
Oh, not the city?
No, it is not owned by the city.
Oh.
That is a privately owned parcel.
Oh. So the private owners aren't taking care of it? Okay, thank you. I'm just wondering if we can follow up with the private owners about weed abatement and such.
I think code enforcement does from time to time, I'm sure.
Thank you, Commissioner Koss. Thanks again, folks, for the presentation. It's well thought out. Is there any type of time frame for ownership to change hands on this? I mean, real estate values change. They could sell it in the meantime to some other entity who's not as interested in this. And I guess along that thought line, have you discussed this with any of these owners of these parcels already?
Well, there's a couple of parts to that question that I can talk about. I don't know if anybody else wants to jump in here, but the first part is kind of on, the timing of property changes and things like that. And that one of the things we're intentional about here and we want to do is get this plan in place and adopted. We wanted to do it before the station starts taking passengers and it becomes open, but also sort of, concurrent with that. So that we can have something, people always come, Jeff and I we always talk about this, people ask us, what's the city want in some place? What's the city want to see here? That kind of thing. This gives us something that's official that says this is the kind of stuff we'd like to see. So as soon as possible to get this in place to sort of communicate that vision that I talked about, because I think this is a critical opportunity for the city in this area to get right and not miss things. The second piece was about sort of the, did we talk to property owners and communicate with them? So there was and when I went through that public engagement overview, there was a invite and presentation given to the bid by Economic Development about this plan early on. So it was about a year ago, I think, that happened. We sent, and PlaceWorks did this, but we in addition to all the property owners within the study area, sending them these brochures, which are in the packet. I actually have some sitting over here with the information about this, inviting them to the open houses. Some of the key businesses, I don't know what the cutoff we selected, was it some size, 5,000 square feet, so some size limit. Yeah, we picked a size up. So any of the significant businesses in here also, in addition to the property owners, got invites to this process. And then one of the interesting things that came out at the first open house is we had quite a few of the business owners from Vermont showed up at that meeting as well and provided some feedback to us, which is incorporated into this stuff. So yes, we want to get it done soon because we think there will be increased development interest in this area once the station is going, plus Metro has this property that they'll want to develop, the construction authority, and also, yes, we've reached out to multiple times to the owners and businesses.
So in essence,
within the scope of this,
the city would not be purchasing the properties. You would be just matching a developer with a willing buyer with a vision plan.
Exactly.
Well, we're not buying the properties.
No, that's what I said. We're not buying the property.
And I think also,
We're playing matchmaker to develop.
well,
these areas.
we're not brokering real estate deals either. So,
No, I understand. But we got to match the milk with the cookie.
Well,
No,
I think
not how
the city's role is not. I mean, it's sort of a funny situation. On the one hand, the city is the entity, the government that sort of establishes the rules of the game. We're the referee for the players who play in the sport of real estate development and ownership. So we develop the vision, say, what does the city want? What does the city allow? What are the rules of how I can use the land? The city does have some influence, however, through establishing those rules on the outcome of the game, or at least it can lean into what it would like to see in terms of an outcome of the game. And sometimes we're involved in conversations with those who are real estate investors, developers, builders, as well as property owners. But our role is sort of limited in that arena.
I
don't want to.
No. I get that, but at some point, somebody's got to know that parcel D is for sale.
Again, there's a whole world of real estate owners and commercial brokers and investors, and that's what they do for a living.
Yeah, we can't always pick the players in his analogy.
No. I'm not suggesting that we would pick the players. I'm just curious as to how you hook up an owner with a developer, given the guidelines that we have control over.
Well, again, that's not the city's.
We can't pick the
role
players
per se. I mean, we're not the ones we're not playing matchmaker.
Okay, do we put a call?
So this is.
How does a developer know that parcel D is
Oh, trust me, they'll call us.
Again,
right,
there's there's a whole world of real estate investors and developers and builders, and what they do is they go around looking for opportunities. So
Yeah,
if you're,
I understand, and once they know that we've approved this development plan, they'll probably come knocking.
It'll go on the website and stuff. It'll be part of our long-range plan and eventually maybe feed into our next general plan update, which everybody will look at when they want to do a large project here
Yeah,
in development.
okay, I'm just curious how that worked. Do density bonuses apply to any of these projects, or to all of them?
Well, this is a vision, it's not a specific project. So if somebody came here and we
If they
had,
built it according to what I see here, would,
sure, they could invoke a state density bonus if they hit the affordability and the prevailing wage and all the other stuff that they have to do and that applies to anybody who builds anywhere in the town.
how would you see this changing significantly or insignificantly as a function of our next RENA cycle?
it's hard to predict the future. I mean, we don't know what what the RENA numbers are gonna look like in the 7th cycle. I mean, this is an effort in part to address the current RENA cycle and actually really try to have a vision we're trying to react to, we have this train coming to town that's gonna come through. So how might the city, accomplish its goals for RENA in the current cycle? And take advantage of this, what is it, a $2 billion project that is going through the city, largest transportation project to hit Glendora into the San Gabriel Valley since the 210 extension came here in the early 70s. So, if Glendora wants to be a player, so to speak, in the world of, developing or encouraging development around its station, what vision does the city have? And so this is kind of what
we're
this
pretty,
exercise is
yeah,
all
we're
about.
fortunate that this happened for us because, I mean, it's, like in the old days, if the highway went around your town or something, it's the end of your town. So yes, this is a big opportunity for Glendora to get this station.
Yeah, no, I'm in full support of it. As far as the parcel across the street over here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think that's our calling card, one of our calling cards right there, to rooftop dining, a movie theater, and people say movie theaters. Well, they've got one in downtown Monrovia that does pretty darn good. It's packed all the time. So anything along those lines, I'm in full support of. Covered that. This a little out there. Is there a percent of, for the mixed use, is there any percent of residential versus commercial that we're aiming for? I know somebody could come in and say, the city may want 50-50 or 70-30, and somebody comes in and says, I got one that's, 40-60 the other way.
Well, we have, that's, I mean,
And I know
from other
that's-
cities you work at, I mean, I've heard of different ratios that make sense, but of course, the retail market has changed so much post-COVID. Same
I
with
know, that's why I say
restaurants.
it's out
I
there.
hesitate to give you like a
Yeah,
one-third.
I would say we have an economist on site who did the market study that's included in the report. And what he's been telling us is that if you do mixed-use projects, the residential is subsidizing the commercial space. Developers aren't going to expect to get any money out of those commercial spaces, so they'll build it if the city requires it. But what you see in a lot of communities is then that ground floor commercial space is vacant on these brand new buildings because then they want pretty high rents. And, sometimes developers will just bring in somebody they're losing rent on just to fill the space because it's a lifestyle amenity for their tenants. But what's driving the real estate market right now is residential. The retail market's
Do
very
most
flat.
of these developers build and own at the same time, or build and turn it over to a
It depends. It depends. What you see with the larger buildings, in my experience, and these are your 100, 200 unit, communities, there'll be one developer who will build it, and about a year after they get it kind of, fully leased, these kind of buildings are never fully leased. But once they get to a certain lease point that allows them to pay off their original loans, they generally sell it. So, an Avalon might build the first building, but, might build the building, but then they'll sell it to, Yeah, Amley, the other big housing developer, they're constantly changing
Okay.
hands. It's a weird game, and I don't quite understand it.
And I think from the commercial space to residential ratio, so if you look at this area, if you think about this area right now, there's actually a fair amount of commercial, there's a lot of commercial actually, and there's a lot of residential within this half-mile radius. So, and the highest value commercial for shopping and so forth are probably, we think are, from a land planning perspective, are the 2 grocery store anchored shopping centers and the village. Really have 3 areas. And so you can see how, as we were looking at sites, we also feel, in addition to adding the residential, we think that from a strategic perspective for economic development, that we're trying to leverage really housing development and our arena requirements to actually increase the value and what they can provide to the community for those 3 primary commercial areas, which are the 2 grocery store anchored centers and the village. That we have the biggest projects really right next to those.
Have we talked to Vons and Albertsons about how long they're going to stay there?
We have had conversations with the ownership for both those shopping centers, more recently with Albertsons, but we're in touch with those property owners. And I mean, we want those owners to know hey, this is what vision we're trying to achieve. And likewise with the village. The village is a little bit different because it's not all under single ownership. You have many, many owners and small buildings. However, it's of high value really to support more residential development as a tool to enhance its value, because it's really the only place in the city that you can,
That's what it is.
that you can walk around and shop. It is the only, and that's why it's the only place in the city, other than maybe the marketplace, that you see people out, walking around and shopping. So, I don't know, just kind of, if you look at the blue areas again relative to those major commercial areas.
Yeah, I think just a note on the Vons on Foothill, if you look at the map here, it's fractured into a series of different parcels, whereas the Albertson site is mostly one parcel. The other quirky thing with the Vons site is one of the washes goes underneath the parking lot. So there's this kind of like easement that would complicate kind of large-scale development with that site. That was one of the reasons that we left it out of the equation.
Okay, well, again, thank you, gentlemen, for everything. And with that, I'd like to request a motion.
I will make a motion to approve.
I will second. So Commissioner Koss made a motion, and I seconded it. Commissioner Davis, and I'd like to call for a vote.
Can you please clarify what the motion's for?
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah. Recommended action, motion that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the following related to project PLN 22-0059. Number 1, adopt a finding, a statutory exemption pursuant to Title 14 of the California Code of Regulations, CCR, Section 15262, feasibility and planning studies of the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, guidelines, and number 2, adopt a City Council resolution entitled, A Resolution of the City Council Adopting the Glendora Station Area Vision Plan. Motion by Commissioner Koss, seconded by Commissioner Davis.
Call for a vote.
Oh, it didn't come on mine.
Touch the screen.
Oh, thanks.
Motion carries 4-0.
Awesome. Okay, moving right along, we come to the member staff closing comments. Any comments from commissioners? Staff?
Welcome, Wendy, to the.
Welcome.
Oh, yes, welcome.
All righty, so with that,
I do have-
seeing no,
Mark, I do just want to.
oh, okay, Mark.
Just to clarify, we will be having a meeting next month. Right now, it's just one item, but it'll be, right now, be the same developer is proposing a development for the old mortuary site on Route 66.
Right.
So it'd be a three-story, a different type of product type.
Yes.
A three-story town product.
We're having the joint meeting in August, or?
Right now, there is one meeting there possibly a special meeting is being requested, so there might be possibly a second.
Hold the date for a
Still
potential
holding.
special meeting on August 28th.
Yeah, I
Correct.
will
It's
not-
been
I will not be here.
finalized yet.
Yes.
With that, everybody have a great 4th of July, and I adjourn the July 1st meeting at 9:45.